All right, so now I want to get to the homework for this topic, right? Okay, now what I did is I went and I made the worksheets up. Again, see what happens in the book with the book is they want you to put a number in a box for your answer. But in other words, to come up with those numbers, you need to do something like this, right? And all I really did was took the illustrations in the book and just, made the same columns that they used in the book. So let's see where we are with this. This was the problem we had to do, this problem 7-1A. The Italian bread company purchased land as a factory site for $70,000. An old building on the property was demolished. Oh, no, we did that one already. I'm sorry. We did that one already. This is the one on depreciation. Okay. University Car Wash built a deluxe car wash across the street from campus. The new machines cost $270,000, including installation. The company estimates the equipment will have a residual value of $24,000. And they estimate that you're going to use the machine for 6 years or 12,000 hours. So prepare a depreciation schedule for the 6 years using the following methods: straight line, double declining balance, activity base. Okay. So let's see if we can do that. Okay, so this is 6 years. Okay, so what's the depreciable cost? It's the original cost minus, it's the original cost, which was 270, minus the residual, which is 24, is 246. 246, 246, 246, 246, 246, 246. Okay. Now the rate. The rate is 1/6. Now 1/6 is not a nice number. 1/6 is a repeating fraction, right? What is it? 0.1666666 till the end of time. So what's the same thing as multiplying by 1/6 is dividing by 6, right? So I'm going to say the rate here is 1/6, right? 1/6. Oh. 1/6. Still reading it that way, okay? 1/6, I have to do something here. Sorry about that. So if we divide by 6, 246 divided by 6 comes out to $41,000. I'm just going to say divide by 6, right? All the way down. So what's the accumulated depreciation? Well, 41,000 at the end of the first year. Second year, I have to add the first 2 years together. 41 plus 41 is what, 82? Third year, I have to add the 3 years together. 41, 41, and 41, which is 123. Fourth year, I have to add the 4 years together. 41 times 4, 164. And finally, 41 times 5, 205. Right? And 205 plus 41, 246. Okay, now, if I add this column up here, that adds up to 246, doesn't it? Right? What's this number? 246. So these two numbers have to agree. And then the number I have to wind up here, book value, is the residual cost. And the residual cost was $24,000. So I know I have to wind up at $24,000. What's the book value? The book value is the original cost. And this is another mistake I used to make all the time as a student. I used to say it was depreciable cost minus accumulated depreciation. No, it's original cost, right? That's original cost minus AD, accumulated depreciation, right? Original cost minus accumulated depreciation. So the original cost is 270 minus 41 is 229. Right? Second year, 270 minus 82, 188. Third year, 270 minus 123, 147. Fourth year, 270 minus 164, 106. Right? And 270 minus 205, 65. Right? And then let's look at the last year, 270 minus 246, 24. So a lot of times what I like to do when I start the problem is I like to lay it out like this, and then I'll put 246 here as a total. I'll put 246 here as the ending amount of accumulated depreciation, and I'll put 24,000 as the final book value, just to remind me that's where I have to wind up. Right? Now, I'm not saying you have to do that, but it'll prevent you from making mindless type mistakes. All right, now let's take a look. Let's take a look at something. I don't remember if I did this or not. Let's take a look. So here's the problem. And notice this is what they give you, right? This is what they want you to give them. So, I mean, this is great, except there's no way you can get to this without this, right? So let's see, what do they want? They want the depreciation expense. Where did it go? They want the depreciation expense was 41,000, right? 41,000. All right, the accumulated depreciation was 41, 82, 1, 2, 3. I have to go back and look. 164. Where did I go? Where did it go? 164, 205, 246. Right, and then what were the book values? $229, 188, 147, 106, 65, and 24, right? So let's go back to this. Right, this was 229, 88, 147, 26, 65, and 24. Let's see. We got this check my work button. What was wrong with that? $270 minus 164, 106, I'm sorry. All right, check my work again. There you go. Okay. So that is a straight line, right? But remember, when you're doing the problems on the computer, you know, they're looking for certain answers. So to get to this, you really needed to know how to do this, right? Okay. Now, the next method they wanted was declining balance, double declining balance. Now, remember, this method is based on book value and a rate that is double straight line. So what's the beginning book value? The beginning book value is the original cost. It's the original cost. And what's the rate? The rate for straight line was 1/6. Well, double 1/6 is 2/6, and 2/6 is 1/3. 1/3, if you do it as a percent or a decimal, it's 0.33333333333, right? From here all the way to the other side of the world. So what we should do then is, rather than multiply by a fraction, a percentage like that, which will give us a weird answer, here we divide it by 6, Here, let's divide by 3. So 270 divided by 3 is 90. Accumulated depreciation is 90. Book value, original cost, 270 minus 90 is 180. Now remember, what does the total have to be after the 6 years? What was the total here? It was 246. We have to wind up here at 246. Accumulated depreciation at the end of the 6 years, we have to wind up at 246. And book value at the end, we have to wind up with the residual, which is 24. Something weird is going to happen here, right? Something weird is going to happen in that last year, as we saw before. So now, what's the book value to begin year 2? It's 180. 180 divided by 3 is 60. 90 plus 60 is 150. And 270 minus 150 is 120. Book value beginning 120 divided by 3, 40. 90 plus 60 plus 40, 190. 270 minus 190, 270 minus 190 is 80. 80 divided by 3. Now we're going to get a weird number. 26,667. I hate when that happens. All right, now if I add the 4 years together, what does that come out to? Comes out to 216,667. 270 minus 216,667, 53,333, 53,333 divided by 3 comes out to 17,778. All right, now if you add the 5 years together, $234,445. Right, and the book value $35,555. Okay. All right, so now we have to come up with a number here that makes this add up to 246. Or I could compare these two numbers, the difference between these two numbers, 246 and 234,445, or the difference between these two numbers, 35,555 and 24,000, which I think that's probably the easier one to do, right? Because you could see here, 35 minus 24 is 11. 11,555, okay? Now, let's see if that adds up. adds up to 246. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that that's right. I'm pretty sure that that's right. And that's a crazy, crazy thing, right? It's a crazy situation. 35, 555. And here I'm going to say, again, you wouldn't put this in on Connect, but here I'm going to say plug, right? Because we're not dividing by 3. What are we doing? We're plugging a number in here to add up to 246. That's really what we're doing, right? Is that a scientific term, plug? In accounting, it is. I can't tell you how many times in accounting you know where you need to wind up. And if you compare that to where you are now, you back in, right? You plug the number to comes out to what you need it to be. Happens pretty often. Okay, now let's go back to this. And declining balance, let's do it. Let's see. So we need to copy all these numbers over. I'm just going to write them down on a piece of paper so I don't have to keep flipping back and forth, right? So this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 90, 60, 40. Okay, so depreciation expense was 90,000, 60, 40, 26, 667, 17, 778, and 11, 555, right? And that should add up to 246. Bingo, right? Here I know this has to be 246. Here I know this has to be 24. I already know that. So let's say you were taking a test and you had to do something like this and you had complete brain freeze and you just had a block of numbers like this to fill out. This number you knew when you started, this number you knew when you started, this number you knew when you started. So at least you get partial credit if you didn't know what else to do. Okay, and what do we have here? 90, 150, 190. And where are these numbers coming from? Add these together. 216, 667, 234, 445, right? And then book value is the original cost minus accumulated depreciation. So this is 180. This is 120. This is 80. This is 53, 333. And this is 35, 555. Now, if you add these two numbers together, book value and accumulated depreciation, what do you have to wind up with? Original cost, right? Original cost. So that's another check and balance to see if you're doing the thing correctly. Okay, so far so good. right, so now we're going to look at this other method, this activity-based method. And remember what it said in the beginning. They'll use the machine for 6 years or 12,000 total hours. 12,000 total hours. So we can depreciate by the hour and then multiply it by these hours used. So what were the hours used? They're 3,100 the first year, 1,100 the second year, 1,200 the third year, 2,800 the fourth year, 2,600 the fifth year, and 1,200 the sixth year. So if you add all these together, it'll add up to 12,000. So notice some years they use the machine more than others, right? I mean, obvious from what you see. Okay. So let's go back to our table and activity base, right? Now, what do we know about this again? We know that the total has to come out to 246. We know that the accumulated depreciation at the end of the sixth year has to also be 246. And we know that this has to come out to be 24. And so we already know that before we start. The miles driven, right? They gave us 3,100, 1,100, 1,200, 2,800, 2,600, 1,200. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add them together just to make sure I copied them right. 12,000, right? So that should come out to be 12,000. Okay. Now let me figure down here something. The depreciable cost is 246,000, and I'm going to divide that by 12,000 hours. What does that come out to be? 246 divided by 12 comes out to be $20.50 an hour. $20.50 an hour. Every hour I run those machines, it's costing me in depreciation $20.50. 20.5, 20.5, 20.5. And this should be $20.50, right? So you remember there's a dollar sign there. Remember the example of the car in the book was what? It was 35 cents. So here it's much more. It's $20.50. So what's the depreciation expense? It's the miles driven times the rate. So 3,100 times 20.5 is 63,550. Oh, wrong place. 63,550. What about the second year? 1,100 times 20.5, 22,550. Look at that difference, right? It's almost 3 times as much the first year. So doesn't it make sense? If you had a car, let's say you used a car for business, and one year you were really busy, and you drove your car 30,000 miles that year. And then the next year you weren't so busy, or maybe you took public transportation instead, and you only drove 10,000 miles that year. Doesn't it make sense that the depreciation would be more the year that you drove the car more? Right? So this makes sense. This is not nonsense. I mean, this does make sense, but it's not used that often. Again, why are these things not used that often? Because they're a pain in the neck, right? That declining balance is a pain in the neck. That confuses everybody. This, being different every year, this confuses everybody. But straight line, you have to almost try to make that come out wrong, right? It's so simple, so straightforward. So that's why everybody uses the straight line. And again, the argument is, well, I got to come out to 246 anyway. What's the difference? Right? Let me just use the easiest way to do that. 1,200 times $20.50, 24,600. 2,800 times $20.50, 57,400. 2,600 times $20.50, 53,300. And 1,200, we had that once before, right? 24,600. Now I'm going to add this up, and this should come out to 246. If it doesn't, I made a mistake. All right, so thank God it came out to 246. What's accumulated depreciation? Well, you just got to add the years together, right? So second year, right? Third year, fourth year, fifth year, right? And sixth year, let me get rid of this and make sure I did it right. Right, 246. Now, what's the book value? Remember the book value, again, it's the original cost. Original cost minus accumulated depreciation, right? The original cost minus accumulated depreciation. So 270 minus 63,550. 206, 206, 450. 270 minus 86,100. 183,900. 270 minus 110,700. 159,300. 270 minus 168,100. 102,900. And 270 minus 221,400. 48,600. All right. Now remember what Connect is asking for. It's asking for these three columns. So let me write these things down so I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. Okay, let's go back. Now remember look what they say here. I just noticed this. It wasn't a factor in the problem we did, but when you do it, it might be, right? Because everybody gets the same problem, but everybody gets different numbers. So notice what they say: round your depreciation rate to 2 decimal places. Ours came out to $20.50. That was fine. But yours might not. So make sure you handle that correctly. So depreciation expense, 63,550, 22,550, 24,600, 57,400, 53,300, 24,600. Right? Adds up to 246. This has to add up to 246. This has to add up to 24, right? By the time we're done, 24. So this is 63,550. This was 86,100. This was 110,700. This was 168,100. This was 221,400. Right? And this was 206,450, 183,900, 159,300, 102,900, and I have to go back and look. 48,600. All right, let's do a check my work. Oh, mistake here. Right, again, sometimes I can't read my own handwriting. So let's see what this is here. This number was right. So 270 minus 168,100 is 101,900. 101,900. Isn't that a great thing? Check my work. Okay, so the last topic for today, and again, remember this is on your exam, okay? If you go back to the book, it's under this section here, asset disposition, sale, retirement, or exchange. We're not doing exchange. Right? I think the problem we're going to do is sale, but what's the difference between sale and retirement? Sale means you got something, you sold it, somebody paid you money for your old asset. Retirement means you threw it away, right? Cannot be sold. So when you do a sale, the chances are you're going to either have a gain or a loss. How do you calculate gain or loss? You have to compare the cash that you received to the book value of the asset. What's the book value of the asset? It's the original cost minus accumulated depreciation. Compare that number to the cash. If the cash you received is greater than the book value, you have a gain, right? A gain occurs when we sell an asset for more than book value. A loss occurs when we sell the asset for less than book value. Now let's take a look at the journal entry that gets made. Okay, then we'll go back and look at the illustration. Because a lot of these numbers are given to you in the problem, and it really is not, it's not that difficult if you remember what you're trying to do. What are you trying to do? getting cash, which means you have to debit cash, and you're getting rid of the asset, which means you have to credit the asset. So in this particular case, we had an asset that originally cost us $40,000 that we sold for 22. Debit cash for 22, credit equipment for 40. Now, if we get rid of the asset, that means we also have to get rid of the accumulated depreciation. Remember, the accumulated depreciation follows the asset around. If we don't have the asset anymore, we don't have the accumulated depreciation anymore. Right? Now, assets have debit balances. That's why to get rid of the asset, you credit it. But accumulated depreciation was a contra asset. Contra asset accounts have credit balances. So to get rid of it, you need to debit. The difference, the number that you need to balance your entry, because remember, every journal entry, the total debits have to equal the total credits. The number that you need to balance the entry is either a gain or a loss. If you need a credit to balance the entry, it's a gain. If you need a debit to balance the entry, it was a loss. So do you have to be able to calculate the gain or the loss? Not really. If you have a good knowledge of debits and credits and you know what entry to make, you don't have to worry too much about that. You can just say, okay, I've got debits of 43 and credits of 40. That means I need an additional credit of 3. Additional credit in this case would be a gain. But if you want to calculate the gain or the loss, compare the cash you received to the book value of the asset you sold. Right? I received $22,000 in cash. The book value was $19,000. 22 minus 19 is 3. The thing that makes these problems difficult is that sometimes they'll tell you what the accumulated depreciation is, and sometimes they won't. And if they don't, you have to be able to figure it out. Right? So here, the depreciation is 7,000 a year times 3 years. That's where that 21,000 came from. And again, sometimes they'll tell you 21,000, other times they won't, and you'll have to figure it out. Right? Now, the same holds true with losses. Here's the entry again. Here's the same example, only that we sold it for 17,000. Debit cash 17,000, credit equipment for 40. Oh yeah, if I credit the equipment for 40, that means I have to debit the accumulated depreciation. Accumulated depreciation is 21. What do I need to make this entry balance? I've got debits of 38,000 and credits of 40,000. So what do I need to make this entry balance? I need a debit of 2. Debits are losses. Right, now let's take a look. This is a homework problem, right? Now, I'm sorry, you didn't have a homework problem. Yes, I didn't include this in the homework. But you're going to have an exam question on it. So you really do have to know how to do it. All right, so let's take a look at this example here. Abbott Landscaping purchased a tractor at a cost of $42,000, and they sold it 3 years later for $21,600. Abbott recorded depreciation using the straight line method, a 5-year service life, and a $3,000 residual value. Tractors are included in the equipment account. Right now, they played a dirty trick. They did not tell you what accumulated depreciation is. Can we figure it out? Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's that difficult. So let's go here, right? I'll just do it down here on the bottom. Okay. How much did the tractor originally cost? Right, what did they say? Oh, where am I? The tractor originally cost 42, has a residual of 3. 42,000 minus 3,000 equals 39,000, right? So the depreciable cost is 39,000 and it has a 5-year life. What's 39,000 divided by 5? It's 7,800. So depreciation is $7,800 a year. How many years did we have that tractor before we sold it? Sold it 3 years later. 7,800 times 3. 23,400 is the accumulated depreciation. Okay? The accumulated depreciation. So now what's the book value? The book value is the original cost, which is 42, less the accumulated depreciation. The accumulated depreciation, we just calculated 23,400. Book value, 18,600. Book value is 18,600. How much did we sell it for? Again, I have to go back and read. We sold it for 21,600. So the thing cost me, the book value was 18,600. I sold it for more than book value. I have a gain of $3,000. Right now, how do I turn this into a journal entry? How do I turn this into a journal entry? All the numbers are here for the journal entry. They're all here. Well, I have to debit cash for the amount of cash I received. What did I receive? I received 21,600. I have to debit accumulated depreciation for 23,400. Where'd that come from? Right here. I'm going to credit equipment for the original $42,000 cost. Okay. Now stand back and take a look at that and say, okay, I have debits of 21,600 plus 23,400. That comes out to $45,000. I've got debits of $45,000 and I only have credits of 42. Therefore, I must need a credit of $3,000 to make that entry balance. Well, that's the gain. That's the gain. Credit gain. So do you want to calculate the gain? Yeah, you can calculate the gain. You don't want to calculate the gain, can you still figure it out? Yeah, you can still figure it out if you get the other parts right. Okay, so let's see if we can put that into the problem here, right? Debit cash was 21,600. Accumulated depreciation, I think that was what, 23,400. Equipment was 42. Gain was 3. Check my work. Correct. Okay, now let's assume everything was the same, except that this time we sold the tractor for 13,600. So if we go back to our example here, right, and we leave everything the same except this. Something that was worth 13,000, excuse me, something that was worth $18,600 to us, we sold for only, let me say that again. Something that was worth $18,600 to us, we sold for $13,600. This time we had a loss. We lost $5,000. All right, so how would the entry be different? Right, and then just do the math to make sure that the debits equal the credits. All right, so if we go back to the problem, debit cash, 13,600. Debit accumulated depreciation, that was 23,400. Debit loss, 5,000. And credit equipment, 42. Okay, so it's all green. And that was it. That was it. Sometimes they give you another variation on this. What if you retired the asset rather than sold it? Right? If you retired the asset, that means you got nothing for it. Nothing. So your loss would be equal to your book value in a case like that. Right? You couldn't debit cash for anything because you got zero. You would still have to debit accumulated depreciation for 23,400. You would still have to credit equipment for 42,000. The difference would be the book value, and the entire book value would be a debit to loss. Right? But they didn't ask for that here, so there's no reason to do it. Okay. So I think that's all we have to do for today, class. But your immediate issue is your homework, needing to get that done. Right? Any questions about anything?
No. No, sir.
Okay. Well, it's almost over. That's the good part, right? Just got another couple of weeks to get through this. So, again, if there's any emergencies or anything, send me an email. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.
Have a nice day, Professor.
Okay? Be well, everyone.